Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Day One Podcast. I'm Brett Nord.
I'm Adam Daly.
Looking forward to this discussion today.
Episode 13. Got some great stuff going, and we have a wonderful guest on with us today.
We do. I'd like to introduce Lisa from Washington, D.C. Lisa.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. We talked well over a month ago, and when I had that discussion with you, I thought, this is not going to do it justice with a soundbite or two. We need to bring you on and have you talk more. So thank you for being willing to do this with us.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's going to be great. First, before we do that, though, Adam, do we have some updates to talk about with the app?
Oh, boy, do we have some updates.
Yes, we do.
3.0 is out, version 3. Now, we talked about this last time with Paul. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of details that he talked about as far as like the new editor, audio recording, dark mode, and all of that.
Right.
We've had a couple of interim updates that have gone out as well to fix some things. You know, I'm going to quote an engineer here. I'm not saying this is what happened, but I think this is an interesting concept. He says, software is never really released. It escapes.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, it's kind of true.
Well, I'm just thinking like software is always being updated. There's always something you can include or you know, some regression or some, you know, something happens and then you got to change. Like the issue that we had with the downgrade bug, we quickly fixed, but it was such a weird thing, you know, and it wasn't happening to everybody. And you know,
wasn't happening to betas. Exactly.
Well, it did happen to some, but you know, we got it worked out and that happens. But I just think that's an interesting, you know, thing in the software world. But we're on 3.0.3 on iOS that has included some great fixes for things, some updates, the ability to insert text below photos, which was a big ask because the way photos are handled in version 3 are a little bit different now, just to keep the layouts how we wanted them before. So now you can do a long press on any photo in an entry and choose insert text below to add a caption basically to your photos, which was a big ask. So we got that rolled out.
What about the Mac version?
Mac version 2.8 went out as a compatibility update, and Paul talked about this a little bit last time, where he said this was mostly just to get a compatible editor out there.
Right.
He has plans for 2.9 and a 3.0 release in the coming months for Mac, so that's exciting.
It is.
I want to so badly talk about just like some of the design updates that I've seen. I'm so excited about what's coming for you guys. I don't have anything to share with you publicly at this time, but it's exciting.
Yes.
I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to say thank you to everyone who gave us feedback about version 3 through the various methods, through the Facebook community or App Store reviews or contacting the support team through Intercom or you know wherever else, Twitter. We got a lot of great feedback, and you know, some of it was very constructive and things that we wanted to take into account and make the app better.
Yes.
Because I think that's ultimately what we want to do is be the best journaling app out there.
And that's it.
Right?
Yes. Day one that's the mission of the app. So
absolutely.
Keep it to that.
Not you know, not bloated with a bunch of features that are unnecessary.
Sure.
We want to be a simple journaling app that you can record the events of your life.
Yes.
So.
And you mentioned the Facebook community. Just a quick thought. Mention that it's been so fun to see how people are already incorporating audio.
Yes.
I talked to one gentleman that I'll talk to and talk about in an upcoming podcast how he's taking all of his cassette tapes from the past, even when he was a little kid, doing little skits and putting those in Day One.
Dude, that's fun.
It's going to be a fun follow-up. Yeah.
Somebody else posted recently about plugging in an external mic to get really high-quality recordings on there, and I thought, that's a great idea.
Like an evening little ritual start with our children.
It worked out for me today. I'm actually doing another podcast separate from my Lost podcast that I've been doing. This is a little plug. Sorry. You have to deal with it. But I'm starting in this new podcast, and as I was getting an idea for a segment, I was in my car. I just, you know, while it was sitting there, I just tapped the audio thing where I could speak my thoughts and have it transcribe the audio right there in the entry. And that was really cool because I captured that thought as I was driving, whereas if I had gotten to my destination, I probably would have forgotten about it. It was a fleeting shower thought is what it was, honestly, or driving in the car thought.
Yeah,
so
good.
Audio has been great. Great feedback about dark mode. Dark mode has been great for people that want to use Day One at night and not have that eye strain. So, and you know, I've seen people use it 100% of the time. They just like the look of it.
Sure.
So.
Do you remember the user, and I can't remember his term, it was so clever how he coined it a different term when he's in bed with his wife and he like not going to disturb
Oh
her.
yeah,
Do you remember that?
not going to disturb wife mode or something like that. Yeah, no, that was
more
fantastic.
catchy than that. But yeah, the idea.
It makes sense.
Yes.
It makes sense. So,
Yes.
I just want to give a huge shout out to the developers that have worked on version 3, which is all of them. They worked hard on the new editor. They worked hard on audio recording on dark mode, and all the things behind the scenes for that too, to support that. The new editor supports Markdown. When you type it in, it automatically converts to rich text. Or there's a code block feature where you can type in Markdown as you did before and toggle between an edit and read view. Like, there was a lot of work behind the scenes on those, just to make it as good as possible. And we hope to continue to improve, to strive for just being great. So
Great.
that's really all the updates I have. Coming soon, Mac,
good.
because there's some upcoming Apple event soon that's going to announce.
That's right.
The rumors are new hardware and stuff like that. So likely we'll get the release dates officially for iOS 12, for Mac OS 10.14. Mojave.
Yes.
Yeah. So great stuff coming, guys.
Yeah,
We're very excited,
looking
guys. and
forward to
girls.
that.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So we jump into the meat
Let's do it.
of our
Lisa,
episode.
You with us?
Unless you're a vegetarian.
Stop.
Nope.
Meat and potatoes is good. All right. Tofu and okay. Lisa, so when again, as I mentioned at the beginning, when I first talked to Lisa, so impressed how she's using Day One in her profession. And what is your title, Lisa? Just so I get it right.
I'm a psychiatrist in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Cool.
And not only, again, for personal use, but professional use. So do you mind just telling us a little bit about, like, an overview first, how you use Day One in your life?
Sure.
Thanks.
You mean at work or personally?
Yes, to both. Take your pick.
So personally, I really like the idea of having a deliberate day, a well planned out day. So I use a text expander in Day One. It already kind of gives me a format that I make a daily journal entry with like 3 goals and 3 things that if I accomplish those things during the day, I'd be thrilled to death. And then I give myself a chance to write. I really like the idea that you're able to give yourself a number of words that you guys have in the corner. So that's helpful, especially if you're doing any of the morning pages type journaling from Julia Cameron. A lot of people do, and it's pretty helpful because then you can see how many pages you're filling. And then in the evening, I go back to that same journal entry, and the text expander form has on the very bottom, like how I did on those goals, and then 3 things that I'm grateful for, because gratitude is a really important part of mental health.
Awesome. Do you use checklists and stuff like that to mark off those items?
I'm really not right now. Not in Day One, anyways.
Okay.
Sometimes I just, will write myself a note, but.
Sure.
How about tags? You doing tags with those entries?
I have just a life planning journal, so I don't need.
Nice.
I haven't used tags. I'm probably not as good at tags as I could be. I tend to use tags in other kinds of journals, like sometimes when I'm doing like certain kinds of studying and I'm taking notes in Day One, I might tag that journal entry so I can find it later with that topic.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
That's kind of like me.
Sure.
Yeah.
How many journals do you have, Lisa? And tell us about which types you have.
Gosh, I probably have like at least 4 or 5. I mean, I have like just a regular journal that I sometimes keep. I have the life planning one. I have a spirituality journal that I use to kind of keep me on track. I'm trying to think of the other ones that I have. I don't have my computer handy. But there's a lot of different options, I think. They're different than the ones that I recommend for patients, though.
Awesome. Let's do that. Let's talk about your patients and how you use Day One with work.
Okay. So just in general, I mean, mental health is the thing that is the most appealing, I think, about mental health to me and psychiatry is that all the things that you're interested in your life, you can use to relate to patients. So if you're a nutrition buff, nutrition is really important for psychiatry. We think more and more that like depression is somewhat related, at least in part related, to inflammation. If you're interested in computers or computer games, tons of my patients are computer gamers or Lost fans even, or whatever. You can talk about all kinds of things.
She didn't say
So
soccer fans.
That's okay. That's okay. We can just hit a couple of my hobbies and be good. I'm all right with that.
So you can use like anything that you're interested in to relate, to help and relate to patients, and I think that's great. And the flip side of that is that mental health isn't just medication. It's not just talking to somebody. It's working on a lifestyle, an improved lifestyle. And so journaling can really help you stay on track with that lifestyle.
That's awesome.
And so some of the things that we talk about in mental health for journaling, one of them is expressive writing. So we used to say a long time ago, like, if you're mad, just go and get it out, beat on a pillow or whatever, or write about how mad you are.
Sure.
And we noticed in studies that people just aren't necessarily getting better when they write about how mad they are over and over and again. Like in trauma, when there's some kind of big trauma, like a mass casualty or something, and we have people come and talk about how they feel, they don't necessarily get better. And sometimes we think we might be exposing them to the trauma again as we're having them just talk about it without any kind of structure. So a lot of therapies help you kind of reframe some trauma in a way that's useful for that patient by kind of understanding what that trauma meant to them in the kind of wider scheme of things, and how it changed them, and what lessons they learned, and how they might move forward. So accordingly, journaling for mental health has moved forward too. So a lot of the studies were done by Dr. Pennebaker, who's kind of the big guru of journaling. And he noted that people who write more about like meaning than feeling, if that makes sense, they have improvements that can last several months past the end of writing. And if you're making writing a habit, then it makes sense that you could sustain those improvements in your mental health for a long time. So the particular kind of journaling we recommend now is called expressive writing, and there's a lot of nice articles about it. Some in like the New York Times, and Live Happy magazine is a favorite magazine of like about positive psychology. But the idea is that you set aside about 20 minutes and you pick some trauma or something that's distressing you or that you're thinking about, nothing that's too recent that's kind of fresh in your memory, and you write about it. You write about the issues and the conflicts, the things that are bothering you about that particular trauma. And then and you give yourself about 20 minutes. You don't like try to have perfect grammar, spelling. It's not the time for is this right there or there?
Yeah.
Just write how you feel. And then the next day you come back to it and you write about it again. And the next day you come back and you write about it again. And on the third day you kind of reflect on how this has changed you, what it's going to mean for you, how it helps you like how you use this to move forward. And the idea is that every time you write about it, you've reprocessed it and thought about it in a different way, so it has different meaning. And that actually duplicates the kind of treatment that we do with veterans and other people who've had trauma. Is we rewrite the story, because the way that we initially perceived the story was probably not the most accurate. We rewrite it in a way that shows meaning.
Interesting.
And that's consistent with the data about your memory not being so solid. Like it is faulty when you try to recall events that happened in the past. But had you recorded it or expressively written your emotions right then, it might be more consistent.
Sure. I mean, just because the way we feel about it some way doesn't mean that's actually what happened.
Totally. Yes.
Sadly, I wish.
Yes. You gave me I'm sure it was you, Lisa, when we talked, you gave me the recommendation for expressive writing, Words That Heal, the book, James Pennebaker.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I got it on Kindle, so it's in my queue to read. Using expressive writing to overcome traumas and emotional upheavals, resolve issues, improve health, and build resistance. So pass that on to our listeners as a great option to look at. Yeah. Great. And tell us a little bit about the process. So when you give your patients that charge to express, right, what are your kind of tips or 1, 2, 3 steps to get started with that?
So, I kind of give them, I have one of the articles that I show them that we worked on, and um, I don't necessarily read it because
Yes.
unless they give me permission, because I
Sure.
don't think that I necessarily need to hear um, how they're reprocessing it unless they get stuck, and then I let them tell me if they're stuck. Um, I honestly think that, if you're more comfortable on a computer, that day one is a great option. Um, you could handwrite it if you're more comfortable. Some people are not really
Hmm.
super computer literate. Um, I think the best way to to do the journaling is to just do it, if that makes
Yes.
sense. Like,
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I'm
Talk
I'm
about that.
behind
start.
that 100%.
We talk about that a lot. Yeah. Just start
Yeah.
going.
I mean, that's how you start, is starting today.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
and then, they kind of follow. Fortunately, it's not a super complex process. You just write about it 3 times. You write about how your feelings and your thoughts, and people seem to really feel like it helps them. Now, if it's not, this is really a good time to go see somebody, a
Hmm.
therapist, to help you work through some of those traumas or those difficulties in therapy. There's lots of actually, interestingly, a lot of the therapies that we do for traumas, like cognitive processing therapy, those really involve um, the same thing, but with the guidance of somebody else. Because sometimes a trauma might be too personal, and
Yeah.
um, you have trouble making sense of it yourself, or maybe you're just too invested in the narrative that you have in your head, and you might need somebody to help point out when the narrative's not as accurate as you'd hoped.
Yeah.
Hmm. Do you find that most of your patients do want to have you read the entries and share in them processing, or is it more personal they don't?
I think it's about half and half. I mean, sometimes people, especially like people who've seen really terrible things, like in war, for
Hmm.
instance, um, don't want to burden other people with those problems. I mean, that's why they don't talk to their families about those issues a lot, is because they don't want to burden their families with the things that they've seen, or, you know, um, the things that have happened to them.
Hmm.
But journaling kind of is an ear for them to rely on, right? Or a shoulder to help burden this, or carry the burden that they've got.
Exactly. It's a tool that's there for you all the time.
Right. Awesome. That's fantastic.
What other tools do you recommend, Lisa? So our listeners that are, I'm included. I mean, I always need help with mental health and depression, all these things that are so taxing with stress. What other things do you recommend in association with recording or
Sure. So
journaling?
it's different. I think it's different for every patient.
Sure.
Typically, what I do is have people tell me about what's going on for them. As they're talking, I'm making checklists on the corner of my paper so that I can go back and try to write it on a card for them so they have a
Hmm.
personalized treatment plan for themselves. But very often, I say people need to get some exercise,
Hmm.
because exercise has been shown to be helpful for mental health, especially like mild depression. It might be as helpful as medication, as much as it pains me to say that. Studies show that medication is helpful, but exercise is a big part of it.
Hmm.
Um, we wonder, like, what kind of exercise and how much, and typically it's about 30 to 45 minutes a day, and resistance exercise seems to be more helpful than, or a combination of resistance and cardio, more than just
Yeah.
cardio.
So if I
And
understood
then
you correctly, if you're resisting exercise, you should do that most of the day. So did
I
I?
wish.
You're putting words into
Oh,
her mouth.
I heard resistance. Okay. No, that's good
And that's
advice.
Says the fittest
uh,
guy in the office.
Yeah, right.
that's another thing that can be really helpful in journaling, is just writing that stuff down. um, I will often have people keep a log of their habits and the things that they're doing, to see how they
Hmm.
are doing. So that would be another use for journaling, is writing down some of this stuff and how well you're adhering to it. Um, I often
That's
talk
really
about
good.
nutrition, because nutrition is a big part of it. People, when they feel depressed, they want to eat a bunch of carbs and
Hmm.
things like that, and foods that are probably not as helpful. And
Hmm.
at least there's some studies that show that increased, like, fish intake and more fruits and vegetables are helpful for helping with depression.
Hmm.
So, and that may be partly related to the inflammation. It's not totally clear, but so I do talk about that. We talk about hobbies a lot. So, um, there's a psychologist whose name I cannot pronounce because it's like Mikhail something and has like 40 consonants in a row. He
Is this
writes
the
about
flow
the
guy?
concept of flow.
The
Yeah,
flow
the flow
author?
guy.
Okay, yeah. I think
Yeah,
everyone just
it's like
refers to him as the flow book author, but carry on. Yeah.
PZ Kazali something.
Yeah.
I totally mastered that.
Sure.
But he writes about the idea of flow, something that kind of catches your interest, and that you lose track of time doing. So one of my mentors, who's a psychologist, would say that's a state of hypnosis, that you're doing some self hypnosis. And so things that you lose track of time doing, especially if it's something that you're making, like crafting, can really be helpful for anxiety and depression. Spending time with your family, and your support system is invaluable. So I would call it like living a healthy, balanced life is helpful for mental health. And so that's sometimes the prescription for somebody. The medication is, part of the solution, and the therapy is part of the solution, but we only see patients once or twice, or possibly as much as 4 times a month, but we don't see people as often as they're living their life. So sustaining that is helpful.
Sure. I want Adam to try to pronounce his last name. This is the
heavens,
author.
no.
Give it a shot.
Nope. Hold on.
Lisa, you were not exaggerating. I think it's about 12 consonants.
Csikszentmihalyi. I don't know. Something like that. Well, I was just going to make a comment about what you were saying about, fitness or nutrition or hobbies or something like that. I feel like writing those down keeps me more responsible to them, or more accountable to adhering to that kind of stuff. So when I'm tracking my meals or tracking my caloric intake or whatever, I feel more accountable when I've written those things down. Or if I come back and I'm like, I need to get that back down on, either in, my day one notes or whatever.
That's right. And
then I can kind of historically go back and make sure and keep myself on track. And so I wonder if that plays into a part of the mental health issue as well.
Exactly. I think that's a really good point. I mean, we used to say it's all about the calories, but more and more nutritionists are saying, when you're logging your food, it's actually probably more about the being aware of what you're eating, because all the calorie counts are so off. And so it's about being accountable, writing down your goals and your thoughts, or what you're doing for exercise or what you're doing for nutrition. And then you can go back and reflect. Like you said, you guys have that great aspect of being able to see what you were doing a year ago.
Yes.
Look how much better I'm doing a year ago. And that really helps people. That's kind of some of what we do in mental health, is point out when you have an inaccurate thought. So people will say, I'm going to do the same thing forever, and I'm going to be depressed forever. And they can go back and see, look, 1, 2, 3 years ago, I was doing really well. Yes. And I can do that well. I can do that again. So that I'm stuck where I am is an inaccurate thought.
I like that.
And I guess related to that is when you internalize an emotion to be you, right? You say, I am bad instead of I feel, right? That's a big difference even. And I think your point of looking for these alternative ways besides in addition to journaling, and meditation is one I'm sure you talk to a lot of patients about. You already mentioned gratitude journal. I think even writing down positive statements makes a difference, where you visually see that you're trying to change your perspective.
Especially if you're writing, in your goal planning and your intentions, you're making them time and specific. That tends to be more helpful. It's a little bit like the expressive writing. Like expressive writing is cognitively dealing with something that's happened to you, as opposed to just writing about your feelings, in the same way that writing a wish that you plan is different than writing a smart measure, a smart goal, measurable, specific, those kinds of things, actionable.
That's awesome. Good stuff. When you were talking about recording your food, there have been times when I'm like, I'm not going to write this down, what I'm about to eat. Or there should be a zone, like a writing free zone, like from midnight to 2. You don't have to record it.
That's the accountability part, Brett.
See, that's why I can't do it. I got to get better at it.
You got to write down the Taco Bell, okay?
I feel like chocolate shouldn't count.
Yeah, I like that. Exception for sure.
Can we talk just a little bit about specifics with day one? Why has day one been kind of a forerunner for you?
So part of it is I like the design. I'm a little bit of a sucker for a nice, clean design. I think it's really easy to add photos. So I tend to snap photos of things that I'm grateful for or things that I've seen that day. It's nice because it works nicely on all of my devices. So I appreciate that. It's kind of irritating to me when I update one place and then I have to figure out how to push it to another. And it's pretty easy that it does all of those things at once. I also like that aspect, at least for mental health. I like that aspect of the time, like what did you do this time last year?
Yeah.
What were you doing? I think that's very helpful.
One of my favorites, my favorite features on this day.
Many share that with you, Adam, as their favorite.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
It is.
What else do you have, Brad?
Good. Well, that's it for me as far as the questions. Lisa, was there anything you wanted to make sure you covered before we finish?
I wrote down some things, but I think I covered everything I had hoped to cover.
That's great. It's so helpful. I mean, Adam and I can try to talk about mental health and how it, effectively, professionally could be used, but having a professional on makes all the difference. So thank you for your input.
Well, it's so relevant because it's very prevalent going on right now.
Sure.
I have several family, friends
Yes.
that deal with depression or anxiety or different things like that, and having at least a supplemental option like journaling, I think, is helpful for them to have. If they're doing therapy or they're seeing someone professionally, that's great. But I love that you've incorporated kind of a supplemental way for them to deal with it on their own when they're not with you.
Yes.
That's an awesome thing.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
Maybe the last thing, then probably the most important thing, and like as a psychiatrist, I feel like it is important to say is at some point, sometimes mental health and depression and anxiety get too bad, and journaling is a great tool, but they need to get professional help if they have any thoughts of harming themselves or anything. And that's the other thing, is that journaling can be a great health promoting feature, but sometimes people need more help as well.
And I think to your point of when you are writing down your emotions, then I think you can identify that, okay, this is bigger than I can handle, right? This is when the usual go-tos, even the things we've mentioned, the exercise, the meditation, eating right, sometimes those aren't working. Like those don't motivate you. So that's, I think, a good time to be looking for professional help. So thank you, Lisa, so much.
Thank you.
Informative. Yeah. Looking forward to it. And if anyone has questions directly to Lisa, we can pass them along to her for help. And good stuff. Thank you, Lisa, again.
Absolutely. I think this is, like I said, I think it's a critical, relevant topic that anyone can benefit from. Even if you haven't self-diagnosed yourself with depression or anything like that, sure. There are a lot of health benefits regardless of journaling. It's cathartic. I've said that before. I love using that word. It makes me sound smart, but
no, it is.
It just getting words on paper or digitally is just helpful. We have a coworker that's how he formulates business ideas. It's just gets them all out on paper first, writes them down, and then he can start to organize those thoughts and get them together. And how, if we're doing that in a professional setting or a business setting, how much more could we do that in our personal lives? Sure. Just get out how you're feeling, describe how that goes. And I love the 3-day thing. I think that's a really neat idea. I'm going to try that. There's been events in my life that I could probably try that on and see how that goes and see how how my perception has changed or how I've experienced it.
We've talked about templates for a while that we're getting to journal prompts. We are, promise. It's well underway. It's actually really exciting and great looking. Lisa has volunteered to help us with some of that crafting for mental health. And I think that's going to be important to get some custom prompts and templates that help with daily questions. Thanks, Lisa.
I'm happy to.
All right. Good.
That's going to be an exciting feature. There's a lot coming, and again, Brett and I mentioned this in the beginning, that the goal overall is just to be a great journaling app. And I'm confident that any features that are added are going to help that goal. It's not going to be adding features for feature's sake.
Right.
I just wanted to mention a couple of tips and tricks with the new editor, if people aren't familiar.
Sure.
Most of the great updates went into iOS, and more will be coming to Mac in the coming months. But just a couple of tips. When you're editing in an entry, if you have an existing entry, all you need to do is tap anywhere to place the cursor. And that's really great to jump right in wherever you are. Paul mentioned that last time. To dismiss the keyboard, there's just a little down arrow at the top left, and that puts you back into quote-unquote read mode. Mm-hmm. Or you can even swipe down on the keyboard to dismiss it. So just some easy shortcuts to get around that way. Also, to get into the metadata field, you can tap either the map at the bottom or tap the date at the top, and both of those will access the metadata information. So just a couple of tips for you. Long press. We mentioned that a little bit last time too.
Yes.
Right on the home screen, if you do a long press on the microphone, you'll get options to either do a recording for 1 minute with transcription or recording for 30 minutes. And it's just a one-off situation, so you can choose either one anytime. Great way to jump right in and get audio started if you want either or, even if you have a setting otherwise.
Right. And that's what you mean by one-off. It doesn't change the default. It's
that's what I mean. Yeah, it doesn't change the overall setting, which you can change.
Sure.
But if you just, if you've got it set to 30 minutes, which I do, but sometimes I want a transcribed audio, I'll do that long press on that home screen with the microphone and jump right into a transcribed audio. So very cool. Also, the plus button down at the bottom is now a long press if you want to access the activity feed, which you can also get to in the journal drawer. So a couple of features. What I understand why that was done, and hopefully the engineers don't get mad at me for this, but from what I understand, it just helps clean up the code and the menus, putting it in those places. So there's not so many layers of the app coming forward and clogging up the memory and all that kind of stuff. So it's just cleaning up that code and really optimizing the performance, because that's something that we try to do on each release, is really optimize the performance, make sure that it's a well-running app. So a couple of tips for you.
Yeah.
That's all I've got.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hopefully it was informative. I know it was for me.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Lisa. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Make sure you join the Facebook community page if you haven't already. Great discussions going on there. Users sharing best practices, how they've used the new features and stuff like that. Like I said, that microphone idea came out of the Facebook community page. So
there's almost 1,000 friends on there.
Yeah. And we're grateful for your contributions. If you have specific support questions, though, we would really like you to funnel those to the support areas. That way we can track your information. We can get additional diagnostics and logs and stuff like that. So make sure you're going to dayoneapp.com/contact if you need help. You can submit feature requests there, whatever you want. That's we're here to help. And we've also updated and refreshed our help guides to reflect the changes in the new version 3. So if you have
a lot of work for Adam.
There was a lot of screenshots I took.
Yeah.
But that's I wanted it to be helpful for anybody with visual aids and stuff like that. So if you go to help.dayoneapp.com, you can see all of the updates as far as creating entries, adding photos, editing your entries. All of those have been updated to reflect the new stuff. So
awesome. Good work.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great.
Yeah. So until next time, we'll see.
Yeah. Oh, and if you, like I said, if you have any questions, you can email us at podcast@dayoneapp.com. Right?
Yes.
Email us there, feedback about the show or things you'd like to contribute, maybe how journaling has benefited you, maybe in mental health issues. Let's get some, kind of follow up on our discussion today. So
for sure. Keep them coming. Thanks for the updates and questions.
All right. And I guess we'll see you next
talk
2
to you in
weeks.
2 weeks.